morning, everyone, and welcome to our backyard. Today's video is about the plants that are really standing up to this heat that we are having in the southeast. And in fact, I'm going to go through the top 5 plants that are just looking the best right now in the garden. And to give you a little bit of background, I gardened in Zone 9A along the southeast Texas Gulf Coast, south of Houston, and we have had a very hot summer. And we always have hot summers, and we always have a lot of humidity, but our summer started early, and it started in the middle of June with temperatures of above 100 with excessive heat warnings, because down here in the humidity, even though the temperature might be 103, it's going to feel like in the 100 teens because of the humidity. And so it's been really brutal on the plants. So today's video is about those that are standouts in our garden. And the first one I'm showing you is firebush. And firebush is made for the heat. And I'm going to come in a little bit closer so you can see the blooms. Firebush blooms beautifully during the summer and during this heat. And it is covered with pollinators all day long. And the birds will eat the berries, the little berries. And all the pollinators love firebush. And as you can see, it is just growing and growing. It's not stymied by this heat. It is a shrub bush that, if it freezes, will freeze to the ground, but then come back up. And this growth, I'd say about close to 6 feet tall, is just this year because we froze during this past winter. And so this is just growth from this year. It's a beautiful, beautiful bush with the green coloring and the bright orange flowers and then the berries. I've got a couple of different varieties of firebush in the yard. This firebush has a larger leaf, and then it also has a larger flower. So let me pull down here. And then, of course, larger berries. So these are all the berries that the birds love to eat. So I have this longer leaf firebush on both ends, and it's tucked in back over in this corner also. And then I have a narrower leaf firebush in the center. If I can get a little bit closer here. And the leaves are just a little bit smaller. But this one flowers a lot more. And it's pretty much covered in flowers all the time. And so it is covered in pollinators all the time. But I have 3 firebush back here, and I am so thankful in this summer, the heat of this summer, that I have had firebush. All right, on to the next one. The next flower that is a standout in this heat and humidity is Tithonia, or Mexican sunflower. And this happens to be the torch variety. And torch is this gorgeous neon orange color. And Tithonia blooms in the southern garden beautifully this time of year. I am currently on a step stool, and this Tithonia is growing insanely. It's probably about 8.5 feet tall now, And it's to the point where I can't even deadhead it well, the tall parts of this Tithonia. But it is a butterfly and pollinator magnet, as I have mentioned before. And quite frankly, it is just stunning in the garden. Tithonia is beautiful right now in this high heat, in high humidity. It's also a flower that has, they say, is a beautiful cut flower. And I can believe it. The stem is pretty strong unless you bend it. I will grow this again, although not in this location. And one of my viewers recommended the dwarf variety. And I am also going to buy seed for that. This variety is a little bit tall for me. This is not a great spot for it, even though it loves its home right here. But Tithonia is just doing wonderful in this heat. I'm glad I've got a couple of places of it out in my garden, because when I look out during the day, there are all different kinds of butterflies constantly on the Tithonia. I do have it here amongst my passion vine, which is also filled with pollinators during the day. The bees are just starting to come out. So they're starting to buzz me. So Tithonia has been a standout. This is the time of year this next plant just shines, and it is the giant milkweed. The giant milkweed is not native, but it grows beautifully in this environment. And the reason I grow giant milkweed is for all of our monarch caterpillars when we have them. We don't have any right now, but this is invaluable to us because of, and as I was handling the leaf here, these leaves are so thick and they sustain many, many caterpillars. And so for us, having this dense foliage for the monarch caterpillars has been really, really wonderful. And right now is when this plant is just beautiful in the garden. We don't have a lot of them flowering right now, but I did want to show you what the flowers look like. This one is flowering a purple color. We also have two of the plants that will flower totally white, and the pollinators are attracted to these large flowers. I have this giant milkweed in 2 different locations in our garden, and in all of the locations they are doing so well. They grow pretty tall. You can see the one back there is about 7.5, maybe 8 feet tall. And we are going to try to propagate these because they will not survive in the winter if it gets below freezing too long. And so we're going to try our hand at that. I'll let you know how that works. Out of all the salvia I have, This Salvia leucantha, or Mexican bush sage, is just gorgeous. And it had a beautiful flush of flowers in the spring. And I'm just starting to get the second flush of blooms. As you can see, it's just starting. And Salvia is a huge butterfly and hummingbird magnet. And I'm so glad that this Salvia is just springing forth and growing. You know, it's been super hot, and this Salvia also was like this last year. It seems like it just does, out of almost all my Salvia, just does wonderful in the heat. And I've got one more Salvia to show you that just does beautifully in the heat, although this one is more of a shade Salvia. This Salvia is more of a shade Salvia, and it's a different looking Salvia. You can see that the leaves are just huge, and it's gorgeous. I love the texture. This Salvia, Salvia madrensis, or Forsythia sage, just shines in the shade garden. It's hot, it's humid, and this Salvia says no problem. It's starting to get bloom spikes, and as you can see, it will bloom a beautiful butter yellow color, which again is, as you know, Salvia is just a pollinator favorite. And this is on my tippy toes, and this is at way past my height, so this is definitely over 6 feet tall. Just doing such a stellar job in the garden. And number 5 on my list of what is just doing beautiful in the garden in this excessive heat are, of course, my tropicals. And I'm going to lump both of my tropicals together, both Hibiscus and Mandevilla. It's almost like this is what these plants are built for. And even though it is, this beautiful red bloom is going to be opening today, most of mine will open pretty fairly early in the morning, but it's still early. You'll notice the foliage is just gorgeous, and it's growing beautifully, and it flowers beautifully. I'll have multiple blooms each day that the pollinators visit. As you can see, they're just starting to open. If I waited till later when they were fully open, I wouldn't have really good sunlight. Everything gets washed out in the intense sun. I really like the foliage color on tropical hibiscus. It's such a beautiful plant. I'm going to link up at the top the video that I did on hibiscus, because I have luck with tropical hibiscus, but some tropical hibiscus do not do well, and I stay away from those varieties because I don't do any spraying at all in my yard for any type of insects, and these plants just do beautifully on their own. The Mandevilla vine is close to 7 feet tall, and it is starting to bloom again. It just does wonderfully in this heat, but it is a tropical. So that isn't necessarily unusual. But I also really like the foliage on the Mandevilla. It's a beautiful green color. So those are my top 5 in the garden right now in this excessive heat in the beginning of August. If I was to give an honorable mention, I would mention a native Texas plant. And this Texas plant native is called Greg's Mist Flower. And Greg's Mist Flower I have showed you before. Oop, there it is. Which is a butterfly magnet. And this is in the this plant is in the absolute full sun. And it is, I need to do a little bit of pruning on it because it is not fazed by the heat at all. And growing, like one of my viewers mentioned in her comments, Greg's Mist Flower has taken over one of her garden beds, and I can certainly see how that can happen. It is growing beautifully. So these are the top 5 plants that are just doing stellar right now in this excessive heat. A lot of my plants are doing okay and they're holding their own, but these are the ones that are just looking gorgeous and a true standout in the garden. What's a standout in your garden right now? What would you list? What would you list as just thriving right now in your gardens? Go ahead and put a comment below and share. Well, thank you for joining me this morning. I hope you have a wonderful day today, and I hope to see you again.